Niners versus the Cowboys. Cowboys versus the Niners. The history of these two teams is unmatched for anybody who grew up during the 80s and 90s, and it was able to witness this rivalry. It's definitely one for the ages. The 1981 season, the year that the 49ers actually finally became respectable after being pretty much a laughing stock, and kind of the Cowboys whooping boy, to be honest with you, during the 70s when they had Roger Staubach. The 1981 season, there, Joe Montana was finally the starter. Bill Walsh finally had a team that was winning after having two subpar years in the 79 and 80 season. And then you talk about that Dallas team who had, Ed Too Tall Jones, Everson Walls, Tony Dorsett, just to name a few players. Staubach was gone by that point. They had Danny White as quarterback, but nonetheless, they were still a really good team. And, everybody knows the story of the catch. The Niners were down at the end of the game. Joe Montana led one of his many clutch game-ending drives that culminated with the Dwight Clark catch in the back of the end zone with under a minute to go, which propelled the Niners into their first Super Bowl and proceeded to start their dynasty. Fast forward about a decade, and you got the end of the Montana era, the Roger Craig era, the Ronnie Lott era, and you transfer over into the Steve Young time with the 49ers, and Steve Young finally got a shot to be the starter. And Dallas was slowly building that team from the 89 draft when Coach Jimmy Johnson took over, and they drafted Troy Aikman along with some other players, the famous trade away of Herschel Walker to accumulate picks, which built pretty much that defense. You fast forward a couple years, and Charles Haley was a 49er for many years. He defects to the Cowboys, and he was like the missing piece that really put them over the top. Of course, you go to the first championship game, the muddy candlestick game, where it was a pretty close game throughout, and then at the end, Dallas's just dominant offensive line took over, and Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, everybody, Michael Irvin, they ended up winning that game and propelling them for their first Super Bowl against the Buffalo Bills, in which they smashed Buffalo. Next year, we play them again in Dallas, and same outcome. They were just a better team. They were bigger, stronger, faster. The Niners were more of a finesse team. So at this point, you go over to the 94-95 season, which was my freshman year in high school. And, it's like make or break time with this 49ers team. So what do? They spend a bunch of money in free agency, and they pretty much build a super team to beat Dallas. It was the first real super team in sports before they started doing it in basketball. They signed Ken Norton, Ricky Jackson, Gary Plummer, Richard Dent. They signed Bart Oates at center. Of course, everybody knows about signing Deion Sanders. They drafted Bryant Young that year. So they were formidable. Merton Hanks, Eric Davis, Tim McDonald. And the first meeting during the season was a close game. I think the Niners won by 2 scores or 1. I forget. I think it was like 21-7, something along those lines. Then you fast forward, of course, the NFC Championship game, and the Niners come out like gangbusters, freaking intercepting Troy Aikman, and they're up 7-0. The Niners forced a couple more turnovers, and the Niners were up early in this game. Like, they were kicking Dallas's butt. But for anybody who watched the game, that game was closer than a lot of people realize. Troy Aikman had a really fantastic game. I mean, he threw it a ton. Irvin played well. And the Cowboys got it close late. There was a questionable pass interference non-call by Deion Sanders that ended up not being called. And then eventually the 49ers would stop the Cowboys a couple times and then get it at the end, run the clock out, and Steve Young gets his first victory against the Cowboys, propels the 49ers into the playoffs, or into the Super Bowl, excuse me. And then, of course, we all know what happens with that game. We blow out the Chargers and we become the first team in the NFL to win 5 championships. It kind of dies down after that. I mean, we had some good interactions with them after the fact. I mean, they won the Super Bowl the following year. They took Dion from us and signed him to a big deal. And, both teams kind of fizzled out towards the end of the 90s with a lot of big name players retiring. They kind of had a little bit of rivalry as far as with them signing T.O. after we had him, after everything he had done in that stadium, disrespecting the star. So I thought it was kind of interesting that he signed there after he was with us. But yeah, it was a great rivalry. If anybody grew up watching it, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. I can't really say that this game I have as much malice in my heart for Dallas that I did back then. But I was never really mad at Dallas. I was more pissed off that we couldn't beat them. So we have as much of a right to this game as Dallas does. They're a super talented team on both sides of the ball. This is a game where the Niners got to come out fast. They got to come out scoring quickly and assert themselves because, I just feel like Dallas is a team that can get on a roll. So that's my opinion of the era of 49er v Cowboys that any of us who were lucky enough to grow up witnessed. It was a great time. Had a lot of interaction when I was in high school with Cowboy fans. A lot of trash talking, mostly by them. But yeah, it's like a recap pretty much for anybody who didn't live through it. For anybody who did live through it, I know you have similar memories. So that's going to do it for me. Hopefully I'll get on this week live and we'll talk some 49er v Cowboys, probably reiterate a lot of the same stuff. Try to work on getting a guest or doing it solo, whatever works. So thanks for popping in, guys. Thanks for listening to the video if you've listened all the way through. And as usual, as I always say, until next time, I'll see you on the flip side. Bye, everyone.